Hello and welcome to my second discussion on time value of money using teaching notes to accompany Chapter 6, Spiceland 7th Edition Intermediate Book. In this short podcast, I would like to cover the future value of a single amount. Valuing a single cash flow amount is covered in your book on page 323, and it covers the basic idea of how much something will grow to be in the future. So my question to you is, how much will $1 grow to be in 4 years if compounded annually at 10%? I like to draw time diagrams with question marks because it keeps me clear on what my question is. I have $1 now and I want to know how much it will grow to be in the future, so I know I'm working with a future value, or table 1. I'm going to use 4 periods, and I'm going to use an interest rate of 10%. One of the ways I could solve this would be with successive interest computations. Take $1, grow it by 10%, 1.10, and that grows to be $1.10. If you're wondering why I used 1.10 instead of 10%, timesing it by 1.10, 1 keeps the base intact, and 0.10 grows it by 10%. The 1.10 is then left in the account for a year, and it grows by another 10%, and it becomes 121, which is left in the account for a third year, and it grows again by 10%, and it becomes 1,331, left in an account on the fourth year for a year. The 133 grown by 10% becomes $1.46. That would be a successive interest computation, growing it by hand. Compare this answer with Table 1 by reading down the 10% column. We were looking at 4 years, so we would be on this row. We were looking at 10%, so we'll be coming down this column. And notice the interest factor right here is 1.4641. So you could use this table to solve the same problem and the formula that we looked on for Table 1. The future value is the present value times an interest factor from Table 1. The present value is $1, and the interest factor from row 4, 10%, is 1.4641. Take the 1 and times it by the interest factor, and it will grow to be $1.46. I know that we have some rounding errors, and we simply have to agree not to worry about rounding errors. Now take a moment and calculate that amount using your time value of money functions on your new Texas Instrument Business Analyst 2 calculator. Clear the memories, enter $1 as the present value, 4 is the number of periods, 10 is the interest rate, and then solve for the future value, and you should get $1.46. It's significant now that you note that table, Table 1, was built on what happens to $1 using different interest rates and compounding periods. That means that it will work for any amount of dollars. So here's a question for you. How much will $5,000 grow to be at 10% for 4 years? Put this on pause and please calculate that for me, finishing the table I provided to you. So how'd you do? Took 5,000, times it by 10%, got 500, added it on, 550. Took 550 times 10%, which is 550, added it on, 6,050. Took 6,050 at the end of year 3, left it invested for another year. It earns 10% over that year, grows by 605. Add the 605 to the 6,050 and come up with 6,655, which you leave invested for another year. And at the end of year 4, it's grown by 665. And the answer is, I better add a 7, huh? 7320. So that would be one way you could solve this problem by successive interest computations, making a fund accumulation schedule. The second way you could do this much faster would be solved by using the interest table 6-1. You have $5,000, that's your present value, times it by an interest factor where n equals 4 and I equals 10%. By now you know that's 1.4641, but go ahead and look it up. Times that out and you come up with 7,320. Now put this on pause and try it with your new Texas Instrument or whatever calculator you bought with time value of money calculations. Clear the registers, enter 5,000 as a present value, n equals 4, I equals 10%, and solve for the future value, and you should get 7,320. Isn't that cool? We did it 3 ways: successive interest and a fund accumulation schedule, tables, and a time value of money calculator. What would the journal entries be? The accounting for this. Let's back it up a little. Well, initially you make your $5,000 deposit. At the end of the first year, you earn $500 interest, so you would record savings account, cash, debit, interest, revenue, credit. At the end of the second year, you would record $5,500 savings account and interest revenue, and you would continue making those entries until at the end of 4 periods you would have $7,320 in that savings account. Here's a question for you. How much interest is there? Well, you could do this a couple of ways. You could add up the interest column, but that'd be a little boring. Or you could say, well, it ended at 73.20 and it started at 5,000, so the interest I earned must be 23.20. Can start making reasonable shortcuts like that. This concludes my discussion on present value, on future value of $1. Now go to the book and read pages 323 and 324 and see what your author has to say on that. Thanks for joining me for the second part of my time value of money discussions.